This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today, to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey ladies and gents. Alright, so this one is a special edition episode. It's really special because it's with Anton, and it's mostly just about him and his thoughts, and he's speaking to his future child in this little episode. And I just asked him, I know him from LinkedIn, and I just simply said, hey, I'd really like to publish an episode in which you have these thoughts going through your head about becoming, a father to a newborn, and what his newborn should be ready for and prepared to see into this world. And so I find it to be an absolute pleasure and honor to just publish an episode in which giving the brutal truth of what it's like to be a father, but not knowing exactly what's to come, and knowing that, we're not really ever prepared for it, but we try our hardest to be. So I'm excited. Take a listen. Please, if you find it inspirational, or if you find it informative, please share it with someone. It'd mean the world to me. Thank you. Enjoy.
Going in the right direction, things are going well at work, you have a side hustle, whatever it may be, and then you become a father. Whether it's for a first time, second time, or in my case a third time, that instantly changes perspective. And as the birth nears, my baby's going to be born anytime now, really any day, it becomes more and more intense. People call it stress. I don't know if it's necessarily stress. It's just responsibility, the primal instinct that I feel as a male, as a human overall. Because mothers, you guys are amazing as well. My wife is, what she's doing right now while she's carrying this human inside of her is just insane. She's cleaning the house, she's doing all these things. I'm trying to tell her to calm down, and she just keeps going. So, not saying men or women, I'm just saying my personal primal instinct for protector stepping in, and everything that I do comes under a microscope, where I'm always a risk taker. I'm always believing in myself to get into whatever situation by taking a risk I know I'll be able to get out of it. Military, Marine Corps taught me that adaptability. But as I think of my kids, and now this new life comes in, a fifth person comes into our family, it's hard to take that risk. It's always been more than just about myself, but it intensifies, because now, how is it going to be done with one more addition? How are things going to shift? How are things going to evolve? And what I urge as an identity coach to other fathers is we have to keep going. We have to keep doing what we've been doing, because backing off and surrendering ourselves, as intuitive as it may seem, is not the right thing. We begin to continue to sacrifice our time that we would take for ourselves to take care of our bodies, minds, whatever it may be, thinking that we need to provide more, thinking we need to be doing all this stuff. But it's not just about the amount of it, it's the intentionality that will allow us to do both. It's not going out with the boys as much to cut out some time to be home with your wife, with your partner, whatever it may be. It's cutting out time out of wasteful time, but making sure that we're still taking care of our bodies, because these intense moments of responsibility are almost feeling like stress. They're the same feeling, the same overwhelm. But when we start to really break it down and sit there in thought and understand them, we see that it's not just about stress. It can be controlled. You can sit down and make a plan. And that's what, I've been doing, is just figuring out one step at a time. Is this going to be okay? Is this going to be okay? Taking a look at each part of my life. Fear tends to frees us up and tries to put us in a different direction. As thoughts flood into who we are, this is where we start to question our identity, because once again, the feeling of that responsibility intensifies, and we start wondering, are we good enough? Are we the father that we want to be? Or are we going to become whatever we may not have liked in our father? The fears that, a lot of men try to avoid is things that we resented, we run away from, and often become because we force ourselves into certain categories and we just don't go with the flow. What I think about as a father is, what am I going to do? How am I going to be? Do I want my kid to love me? Do I want my kid to respect me? Do I want my kid to be a certain way? What I want to make sure is that it's not about me. The first three things I said out of my mouth was make sure that I'm perceived a certain way, but it's not about that. What I want to make sure as a father, first and foremost, is that my kid ends up being a good person and has a good life for themselves. Not as a reflection of who I am, but as a reflection and possibility of who they can be. Because our kids are meant to be greater than us. Our kids are meant to be everything that we've learned through life, and then their addition, their modification of everything. And we need to let them grow, let them make mistakes, let them get dirty, let them run in the street, let them learn that by jumping too high and not being cautious, they can break their arm. Those things are going to allow them to, in the future, be able to survive moments of difficulty. When I think about a very tough subject to talk about, school shootings, as a father, that's a very, very hard thing to grasp, especially with my youngest in just 2 years going to high school. And it's terrifying. And you hear thoughts from my wife of, let's homeschool, let's keep her home because of all these things going on. And unfortunately, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that my kid has the opportunity to go into a normal school and do things her way without me forcing her to homeschool, because we're afraid of her future, afraid of her getting hurt. And if she chooses to be homeschooled, of course, she can go that route, but at least want her to try. But I start wondering about solutions for these problems. Why do these school shootings happen? And I don't want to get into gun control. This is not what it's about, because when you start talking about gun control, that's all the conversation becomes. It's not about solutions. It's about argument of who's right and who's wrong. But because we don't let our kids fail, we don't let our kids get dirty, we don't let our kids break their arms per se, we think we're protecting them, but we're actually not creating the coping mechanisms within them to survive in the future. And what this makes me think of, I talk about this a lot, is military. In the Marine Corps, you go into boot camp and your treatment is just horrendous. The way that you're treated is I would say, worse than a piece of property. But I'm not saying that from a standpoint of a victim and feel sorry for myself. It's how you felt in the moment. And then you realize what occurred in that time is by absolutely destroying us first and bringing us to nothing. They rebuilt us into believing in ourselves. They rebuilt us into instinctively responding in moments of chaos. And you go into combat and things happen and you don't have time to think. You just have to react. And that's when you remember that training. You remember the boot camp times. You remember all the little games that were played. And that's what I think about as a father. That's what I have to do with my kids. I'm not talking about playing games and severity of that, but I need to allow them to just mess up. I need to push them a little bit. I can't just be their friend, because then I prepare them. And I think by intentionally investing time into them, I'm going to be respected. I'm going to be loved. I'm going to get those things as a byproduct. But if I focus on getting those things first, I can go lead my kid astray. I can take him to a place where they don't want to be, and I don't want them to be either. If I were to leave a message for my future son or, my other two daughters, and what I would want them to learn from me is to have balance in life, to learn that the world is constantly pulling us in multiple directions. People have self-agendas without even intentionally meaning so. They superimpose the way that people feel and think on other people, and then they become something else. So I want to teach my kids to truly be themselves, but to understand that there is extreme sides to them, and they're going to have to experience them at one point or another to truly understand who they are. I talk about this in my book that I'm finishing up, and it's about a pendulum swing. Every human goes through extremes of who they are due to environment, due to things happening, experiences, whatever it may be. And as more things happen, the more the pendulum swings to the center. So coming back to the whole concept of why are kids struggling so much? We're overprotecting them, and they're avoiding these big swings early in life. So they're occurring later in life when there's not somebody there to protect them, and they're there by themselves. And as much as parents would think we're there as they're older, we're not. We're distant. They are pushing us away. So I want to let my kids swing that pendulum of extremes of who they are, make mistakes at a young age, so they come to a more subtle sway as they center their identity, as they become rooted in who they are, and then they grow as an oak, vertically, not be blown by wind as every storm comes around and a person calls them out on something and they become something else. We overcorrect so much, and we need to go through a lot of experiences in life to stop those overcorrections. And once again, slow down and sway just barely side to side as we evolve and grow into life. I just want to leave the fathers with the last thought, and don't lose your fire. Don't lose your fire, because what you are is what your kids see. And the one that you are when you're one with yourself is the one that they need to see. That's how you're going to give them the best growth, the best opportunity to become the best version of themselves by being the best version of yourself.
There'll be girls across the nation that'll eat this up. Babe, I know that it's your soul, but could you bottle it up? Get down to the heart of it. No, it's my heart. Your shit out of your luck. Don't make me tell you again. Woo! Love, love, love. Hey. Love, 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 love.
Oh, wow. You made it to the very end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch with your host, Logan Tyler Nelson. To make it to the end, gosh, that doesn't happen very much nowadays. I mean, especially with the constant distraction. So I appreciate all of the efforts that you just took out of your day to make it to the end. And if you hit that subscribe button and leave a review, you would have no idea what that would mean to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to hit that subscribe button. And if you leave a review, check it out. Just screenshot it, send it to me, and I'd love to host your review out on the show. But don't ever forget, like I say, you matter and you're enough.
main reason for how all of this happened. Love for all my fans, love for all the shows, got love for all my memories, no matter where I go. Even if I'm out to nothing, I know there's always something. It's not a fitness test, but it'll always